We're live.
Hey everybody, welcome. It's awesome to have everyone here. This is the first Node.js Internationalization Working Group meeting. Woohoo! You're here, we've made it. So stoked. Yeah, and we have grown in pretty significantly over the last couple weeks. Got a lot of members. Hopefully more people will be joining over time. And with that, let's get to the agenda here. Or actually, no, what am I doing?
Intros.
Why don't you all tell us who you are and just a sentence or two about yourself, and we'll get going. I'm Ben Mitchell. I'm from Portland, and I am helping out with committee stuff in the Node.js ecosystem. And I am currently working on internationalization, as you can tell. And yeah, it's exciting. And that's a little bit about me.
I'll go next. I'm Zeke. I'm an engineer on the Electron team at GitHub. Recently worked on internationalizing and localizing our docs and API stuff and our website. So I'm here to see if we can take some of the work that we did on Electron and apply it to the Node project. And I will pass it off to Richard.
I'm Richard. I've done a lot of stuff with Node over the years, but mostly in like the joining the community and not so much in the core side. Right now, I'm the person behind Maintainer Mountaineer, which is like a maintenance company that does all sorts of code community building. And I'm here because my senior thesis for my master's is actually on endangered languages. And I would like translation and internationalization is important for all the other languages in the world that aren't major. And I'll pass it off to Adam.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Thank you. My name is Adam Miller. I'm a developer over at LinkedIn and here in San Francisco. Been helping out with the community committee for a while, specifically website redesign initiative and growing badges initiative. I'm excited to help out with i18n where I can.
Rad.
I'm Tierney Siren. I'm a developer advocate at NodeSource, and I'm co-chair of the community committee.
I guess I'll go next. I'm Jacob Groundwater. I manage the Electron team at GitHub. Kind of the rest, as Zeke already said.
Awesome. Is that everybody? I think so.
Hey.
Hey.
I'm Dhruv. I am a student from India, and I'm working on the website redesign team with Tierney and Adam.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Welcome, Dhruv. It's really good to have you.
Hi.
Thanks for coming. Okay, yeah, I think that's everybody. We will start to move through the agenda. Thanks for sharing a little bit about yourself. Again, it's exciting to have everybody here. The first thing that we need to cover in the list here is the meeting time and frequency of our meetings. Meeting time is going to be a little bit more subjective now. I think that should be discussed in the issue itself, but the frequency is more what we should nail down here. Do you all think it's beneficial to have a weekly meeting or a bi-weekly meeting?
I think it'll be dependent on the amount of tasks we set ourselves the next week or 2 weeks. So I think we should actually move this to the end of the meeting. Okay. And then decide when we want to meet.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. That's fair. Let's do that. And the other thing that I forgot to mention here, and I hope I shared it, is that we need a minutes taker. Would anybody be willing to take just sort of general notes about our meeting right now?
I can now, and I can also spin up a doc similar to the other minutes that the Node.js Foundation takes.
I actually already did that, and there's...
Oh, cool. Perfect.
Yeah, it should be... Did I not? I didn't share it.
It is linked. It's linked there.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so you can feel free to jump in. Thanks, Tierney. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, so we need that. And then we need... I would like to request, if anybody would like to, you don't have to feel free to volunteer to do this, but just offloading some of the logistics, since I'm doing a lot of, this is just logistical stuff up front before we get into the the more complicated stuff. But it'd be nice if somebody could be an issue owner for our working group meetings, like basically just writing up the doc that I just did for like every meeting.
So there's actually a tool that Michael Dawson created that runs it automatically against the Node.js org that will automatically do that. So I think it'll come from him, but I can run you through that. Yeah, I went and wrote docs for it, so hopefully that'll help.
Awesome. That's even better. Nobody has to nobody has to add another cognitive load. And that's what I'm trying to offload here.
And thank you for all the work you've been doing so far, Ben. It's been really appreciated.
Oh, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. I'm just like trying to keep the glue together, so we all get stuff done. Okay, and then the other logistical issue is number 30, translators for our working group meetings. We talked a little bit about this. A couple of us talked a little bit about this, but do you all perceive this to be something that you want to discuss right now? The only thing I have to say about it is that we need to make it apparent that if someone needs language representation within our working group meetings, that we need to be willing to look for a help with translation here. And we've also got we have help on the foundation side to be able to put out tweets and whatever to, ask if someone in the community can help us with translating for a specific a language. But do you all have any thoughts on that, or should we move along?
Yeah, I can go through the repo and in this issue here, and basically say, hey, if you need help with translations, or if you'd like to be a member, but your language is getting in the way, let us know. And basically the way I would suggest it is to have them contact someone privately, because saying publicly, I want a Spanish translator, can be a bit embarrassing. And so basically, if we just add a note saying, hey, if you need help, we're willing to look for help for you, then I think that should be enough. And then afterwards, we can figure out the logistics of actually providing that translator, which would probably involve just going on Twitter and the like. And I think that's basically all we need at this juncture. I don't know if we need anything else until directly specified. It doesn't make sense for us to translate this into Chinese.
Right. So. Okay. Sounds good. Zeke, did you have something to say?
Yeah, just when it comes to actually trying to find people to help translate, we have close to 1,000 translators on Electron now, so we can reach out to them on a per language basis.
That would be amazing.
Would it be okay to say that we could reach out to you and Ben about translations?
Yeah, definitely.
Great. I'll just include your names directly then, because that makes it a bit less official than saying contact these people who are the liaisons.
Yep. Sounds good.
Awesome.
Awesome. That's great.
I think my internet dropped for a second there. But would this be textual or verbal translation?
Hopefully verbal, I think. So like if somebody needs representation within this working group and they don't get, what we're saying in English, we'd like to keep it, enough pace so that, keep it at an even pace so that people can actually understand what we're saying and get translation verbally if they need it.
Okay.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is that if people want to have translations of the docs as well that come out of these meetings,
right?
If people working in Chinese on Node want to just have all those translated so they can talk to each other, we should be able to provide that service as well. Yeah,
definitely. And maybe we can maintain that as an idea for localization groups as well. If it would be like, hey, this is an area that you can actually help within, the internationalization working group if you want these documents translated. That's great.
So actionably, I'll go through and add those little tiny notes where I can find a relevant place for them. And then also let's include a note somewhere saying for localization, we can do this as well.
Invitation to localization groups if they would like to translate that into their own language. That would be awesome. Thanks, man. That's great. Okay, I think that covers that for now as an agenda item. Where's my meeting here? Okay, there it is. Okay, next one. So now we're moving on to a report. So some of us met with the CrowdIn team a few days ago. Those people were Zeke, Vanessa, Sotaya, or I don't remember how to say his name. Sota Yamashita, and me. And we discussed quite a few things. What's his name? Androlko. Yeah, Androlko. Okay, so Androlko.
Andre.
Okay. I'm like, I'm still trying to like remember people's names by their tags, but so like Andre, yeah, he gave us an overview of CrowdIn and their basically for integration, how we're going to integrate something like our repository with their service, and went over some of the localization features and whatnot. There's an issue that I made here that's linked that discusses some of what we covered. Zeke definitely filled us in on some of the Electron use cases and how they handled things, like maintaining maps to source files and their translation locations with YAML, like CrowdIn YAML files in the repository and whatnot. So there's links to that sort of stuff in there. I would appreciate if the working group would take a look at that and then provide any feedback that they have as we continue to talk about how we want to use CrowdIn, which is the purpose of that issue. I guess one important, at the bottom of that, there was some discussion about trade-offs between basically security trade-offs. This was an important one, I think, to think about. Like there's verification steps that can be done on the localization side, so people can verify translation or have a peer verify translation before it gets shipped. But I've been thinking a lot about like, well, we'd like to have as little bottlenecks as possible, specifically like the PR process on the repo side, and if at all possible, if we can have that handled on the translation side, where somebody there is some kind of peer review process before it gets shipped, and then we just integrate it, continuously integrate it into our repository without having to PR. That would be like super handy. However, that does raise security concerns. Like if somebody puts in some, if there's a bad actor, somebody puts in some foul language or something. But hopefully with a verification in the CrowdIn service, like that might not be an issue. We might be able to like trust, have a level of trust there.
Yeah. So I generally this is me giving context from when i18n was happening with IOJS. Generally the groups completely took it on themselves and reviewed their own PRs because commonly, people who are mainly English speaking aren't going to be able to review the PR and like actually give substantial feedback other than, great, this looks good, like there's no structure breakage here or anything. So that's generally how it worked. And if that can be offloaded to CrowdIn, I don't think there's an issue. Tentative. What's the security thing that you're talking about?
Oh, just the case of having like bad actors push through like language that's not accurate or says something that we don't think it says.
So I guess. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that as a thought, the leadership here on this team might not be able to verify full quality of translation for every translation that goes through, but it is pretty straightforward to copy paste it into Google Translate and get the gist of what was written. We could make policies around that if we're worried about bad translation sticking in.
Yeah, I'm actually not like me personally. I'm not super worried. I think that's a good. That's a great way to verify though, just to make sure that like general content is there. So that's definitely a good point. I mean, like I err more on the side of wanting to like just trust people. But the issue was brought up when we were discussing it. So I just wanted to make sure that we cover it.
And generally, I think how we did it, again, going back to the IOJS time, is we did it with this group is managing this. If there's an issue with it, like there's an obvious reason we didn't catch it. And that's, we can go fix that. Like, we're not adverse to going and fixing it. It's just there's I don't think there's necessarily a responsibility there that it didn't get caught. So
yeah.
I would also point out that it would be important to put in structures for when those mistakes happen. So rather than us being like, oh no, something happened, okay, what do we do? We could just say now, okay, they have like a 3 misses or something for bad translations, and then at that point we don't accept that translator anymore. But the group still makes control.
Yeah,
totally. Would you make a note of that in the issue, and then maybe we can create another one from that?
Sure,
Richard, that'd be awesome. Yeah, just to keep it documented. Thanks.
So on the Electron project, we've definitely tended to err on the side of trusting people, and the floodgates have generally just been wide open, like translations make it all the way to the website. And that's worked for the most part. We haven't seen anybody doing anything malicious. We've seen a number of translators who accidentally translate the wrong things or make some mistakes, but usually they're doing it in good faith. And the process that's worked for us is just promoting people to proofreader status in Crowdin so that they have administrative control over the translations in their language. So when they see those kinds of mistakes, they can correct them. As far as pull requests go on GitHub, by the time a pull request is generated from Crowdin, it's useful in that as a reviewer, you can see all of the content, but there's no way to have a conversation around those translations at that point. It's just a last mile check to be able to see, like, does this look okay? And that's often a place where I can see that somebody may have translated something in the wrong place. It's also been suggested that we could use like a bot on the GitHub issue that translates content and dumps it into comments so that English reviewers can see it. We haven't had to resort to that. But so far, just kind of being optimistic has worked well for us. And just using the community to like raise awareness and promoting people to proofreaders has worked fine for us.
Totally. That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, I guess that would be something that I'd just love to see, what the actual like metrics of people, submitting PRs over time is, like the frequency essentially. Because I guess what I've been worried about since the beginning is like things changing upstream rapidly, and then people, and then like it bottlenecking in the PR process. And that's why like I kind of was like thinking about, okay, well, why don't we just like bypass the PR and then have people verify on the Crowdin side? It sounds like you all have figured out a good flow for that.
We have automation in place. We have several different forms of automation going right now. So one, we're using semantic release. So that's a thing where basically if commits have a proper like semantic prefix like fix or feat or breaking change, then the versioning is determined automatically, and that happens as part of like a Travis build. Right. So we're using that. We're also using a Heroku app that's running like a cron job type of thing to pull content out of the source Electron repositories into the i18n repo. And then we're also using Greenkeeper as well to open pull requests when the new i18n module is published. So there are still, despite all these various pieces of automation, there are still some human steps involved in the process, which is essentially pull request review. So we're close to having it fully automated. On the topic of like bottlenecking PRs, we get translations every single day, and it varies anywhere from 20 a day to like 1,000. It's pretty much constant. So I end up shipping those PRs every single day. But I still kind of like being able to have that opportunity to look through and see what happened before pushing the button and having it automatically go to the site. I'm meeting with a team at GitHub today, or not today, but this week, about enabling GitHub apps to have the privilege to merge PRs that have passed all of their status checks. So it's kind of a bottleneck right now into enabling bots to like ship stuff. So if we got to a point where we actually had some kind of review, maybe we say we need one reviewer approval or a certain threshold of reviewer approvals, we could have PRs go out more smoothly that way.
That would be awesome. Yeah. Yeah, really, that's rad. Cool. Well, thanks for giving us visibility on that. That's rad. Let's move along to, oh goodness, where is that? Let's move along to the current initiatives. So the next thing that we need to talk about is the auditing of our localization groups to see if they're still active or not. Does anyone have anything else to say about that beyond just posting, creating some general copy and posting an issue on every localization group to gain, insight into their current activity or non-activity, and then using that to be able to determine if they're active?
We could use name your contributors. It's a thing I built basically that like looks at all the contributions by everyone, including issues and comments and PR comments and all that stuff, and reactions. It doesn't really have it so that it'll tell you the amount. Well, no, it will tell you. It'll tell you the amount and then the amount of people, and so that'll be a good way of like figuring out how many people are actually using that repo in the last like 6 months or a year. So that might work pretty well, as opposed to using the GitHub graph, which I think only covers code contributions.
Yeah, totally.
Can you drop a link to that here, Richard?
Yes, I can.
Just also, everyone, I kind of skipped over some of the reports by mistake, so let's swing back around to those maybe after we discuss this. That's cool. Yeah, that sounds good, Richard.
It's pretty GraphQL like intensive, which isn't great. Maybe Zeke might know more about how to get around any sort of issues with like the GraphQL like API limits, but that's what I would use for this, just because I built it for basically that purpose.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'd love to take a look at that. And I think the most important part of this too is to determine like if people are active, just being able to make contact and invite them to continue. When
this push happens, it would make sense to actually also include the note about coordination for translation, which might also be good because it'll be something actionable, so that people can say, actually, I'm interested in that, as opposed to just saying, hey, is anyone here? Yeah. We're here.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I know, exactly. Yeah, definitely. We need to give them some actionable items and some steps. So there was some other discussion about like creating a document on ways to contribute to this process, and so that was kind of part of the step of audit. And the next step after being like, hey, we're here. Okay, great. Now this is sort of what's going on. We want to invite you to join us and contribute. So definitely. Okay, cool. Sounds like we're mostly all on the same page there, and you have a great tool for that, Richard. So excited to check that out. I'm going to swing back.
Should work.
Should work. Nice. Cool. I'm going to swing back up to the reports because I skipped things here. So is Rich?
He was here. I promoted him and then he left.
Oh no. So, do you want to maybe?
He had a scheduling conflict. He didn't know this was on his calendar, so it's possible that he got pulled back into the thing.
Okay. Yeah. So for just to let everybody else know, Richard Loomis is Stephen. Oh gosh, I keep saying Richard. Stephen Loomis. I did that the other day too. Stephen is going to be sort of our liaison to the ECMA 402 working groups and the like Unicode standards as well. for example, ICU and CLDR, and he's excited to sort of keep us updated on that front. So he's been doing that for a while, and can definitely school me and probably other people here about that, because just starting to understand that stuff myself. So we're excited to have him when he can join us. And yeah, that's sort of in our mandate as well. Right now, trying to, over time we'll think more about it, and I'm sure that Stephen will help us understand more of what we can do. But it kind of is in our mandate to ensure that Node itself stays with those, keeps up with those standards. So we're going to have to figure out how that plays into our workflow beyond the initiatives that we're doing, for the internationalization and localization stuff. But since Stephen is not here with us, I'm going to continue to move along. Is there anything else that anyone would like to give a report on before we continue to discuss the initiatives? Oh, Adam Miller. Maybe you can give us a quick update on the website redesign.
Yeah, website redesign is chugging along at a nice pace. I love all the engagement that the project is getting. Most recently, we've been discussing online a wireframe that just went up. Really early IA discussions and content structure discussions. We aren't to the point of implementation and won't be for a while. We aren't even yet to the point of drafting finalized content. We're just talking about what should the site look like, what are the main goals, who are we trying to service, what structure of site best serves those needs, and we'll slowly be converging on a full wireframe and a full IA design, which we can then hand off to higher fidelity designers and people who are currently in the group. I think next steps, we just had a meeting last Thursday, I believe. We talked a bit more about the wireframe and a lot more about process and what was needed next. I think we're going to start drafting more detailed content in places where we feel like we're ready for it. So, namely, some sections on the homepage start iterating on kind of homepage marketing copy style stuff, and then the getting started section, which is a new section that we're looking to partner with Node School to see if we can come up with some. We don't have to draft the content ourselves, but we're exploring options there. So it's still in a very early phase, but it's moving quickly, and I'm really excited about the work being done there.
Awesome.
Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited. Yeah, it's really exciting to see everything being pushed along and all the activity. And for reference to everybody else, we're trying to keep in touch with the website redesign project so that we know and kind of have a general timeline of when we can start helping with translation of the copy and the content there. As
far as timelines go, it is a moving target, but I personally don't see high fidelity enough content to warrant translation for another month or
totally.
Or so.
We're kind of at a place where we're just scaffolding things like the internationalization module that we would like to be able to use for you to import into the website and things like that.
Awesome.
So like we're sort of in a like initial setup and scaffolding phase anyways, and we won't need to be doing that until probably around the time that you have it available.
I think I'm just speaking from a little bit of my own personal understanding of this, but I also think that there's not a hard deadline on either of them, and they don't need to launch at exactly the same time. And that the new launch is it'd be awesome if they did. The new launch is a good time for us to start integrating rather than duplicating that work twice, which is why that's a good thing for us to track.
Oh, I thought it had to all be done by the Collaborators Summit.
Just kidding. No, don't even. You're gonna kill me.
No, don't even joke. You give me heart palpitation.
I'm just kidding. Awesome. Thanks, Adam. That gives us some great perspective on what to look forward to.
Hey, I wanted to ask real quick, Adam. With these changes, is there is there an expectation that the structure of the site will change much, or is it mostly like cosmetic?
The structure of the site will change. I don't want to say it'll change too significantly. I mean, the docs section will say there's going to be a home page still. Like, there's only so much you can change on a code documentation website, but there will be structural changes.
Okay, cool. And this may be more appropriate to just ask in an issue on the website, but I just wanted to ask quickly, this link that I dropped in here to a markdown file on the site, is this front matter, like, is this kind of like a homemade snowflake version of YAML front matter,
Yes.
or it's unique to Node.js, or is this like a real thing?
I might be one of the only people who has context on this. From what I understand, yes, it's a little bit of it's a Node.js thing, not any standard as far as I know. It might be closer to, it's like obviously based off YAML, it might be the YAML front matter. I know we use a static site generator to build the site right now, and like I'm not going to say we're not going to do that with the redesign, but I'm guessing it probably won't be anywhere near what it is right now, in terms of like the front matter and stuff like that. The site structure and how we build it will change. I'm fairly confident.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was just kind of trying to think of like incremental ways to move toward, we were talking about this in our last call, but like in a way you can actually start internationalizing the website without having done any of the translation work. So if we had like an English file that was exemplary of like, you know, how we're going to move forward, like put everything in en.yaml and start using templates elsewhere in the project. And but it could be tricky though, because the site is already internationalized in this kind of best effort way, if you will. So I guess what I would like to figure out is a way to start making incremental progress on the website to being able to internationalize it, even if it just means like, here's kind of how we want to do this, and then we could have people go wild on actually extracting those strings and moving them into a file that could be a structured file that could be like consumed by Crowdin.
I definitely think if there's suggestions you have on how we can start, because I mean, so website and website redesign are two totally different repos right now. Website redesign is where the new work is happening. If you have any suggestions on ways we can kind of make internationalization easier for ourselves, in terms of website maintenance and construction, I highly suggest you go create an issue on the website redesign repo, because that would be extremely helpful.
Okay, so yeah, that's kind of what I was trying to understand. So is website redesign is essentially hoping to eventually become website?
Yes, effectively. I think right
possibly,
now it's just
yes. We haven't talked about implementation details. In fact, we have intentionally kicked that can down the road because we want to get content right. So website redesign right now is a very design and IA focused repository. It's possible in the future it'll become the new website repository. We might iterate in a branch on the old website repository if there's deployment infrastructure set up there that we want to keep and not duplicate. But we honestly, your comment about i18n infrastructure and how to hook those wires together will probably be some of the first detailed implementation specific discussion there. So by all means, kick it off if you want to dive in there. But know that it'll be a new conversation for that group.
Okay, yeah, I'm a little bit scared about that.
Don't be scared. But they're all nice people.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think there's definitely value in finding a way to let both teams work independently, but still have that connective tissue so that neither is blocked by the other. I'd be curious to explore solutions for that.
Okay, this actually reminds me, hopefully, Ben, stop me if I'm derailing too much, but we had a similar thing with the Electron project where in the Electron repo, we had a docs translation directory, and if somebody wanted to translate to another language, they would essentially copy the English docs from whatever tag we were at, and then just start willy-nilly translating markdown files. And it was not a sustainable process because the docs became out of date as quickly as they were copied. So one of the things we tried to do is figure out a way to make use of those existing translations when we moved everything into Crowdin. Like, hey, people already did all this work. Can we preserve it somehow? We came to the conclusion that it wasn't worth the effort, and trying to write code that would figure all of that out and make all the suggestions for you and upload it to Crowdin in some way just seemed too convoluted. So, and with the growth of like the translator community inside of Crowdin, it just happened so quickly that all the content just got translated right away, even though it had already been translated by other folks in the Markdown file. So I would tend to think that with the website, it would make sense to go forward with just English first and say goodbye to all of the other strings that live in the old version of the website in other languages. It's kind of sad, but it's probably not worth the effort to try to copy them over. And if somebody figured out a way, that would be great. But my tendency is, my thought is that it's probably not worth the time and effort. Also, look at this.
What?
A live child.
Hi.
That's amazing.
You're an astronaut.
He can't hear you.
Oh, is he in space?
Yeah, the helmet. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Best Node.js meeting ever.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Okay. Bye. See you later.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think that's great. I just as a general practice, that sounds super sound. Kind of starting over from scratch rather than trying to recontextualize existing data, which may be out of date or errant. Sounds a lot more sane and easier. And it is sad that that makes previous work no longer very relevant. But I feel like in the long run, like you said, it'll make things more streamlined and go by quicker and smoother and actually be more effective. That's my 2 cents. But cool. Does anybody else have more thoughts on that?
I just was thinking that would need to be, it would be beneficial to explain it in some kind of public forum, like,
yes,
hey, we don't want to undermine all of the work that's gone into this, but technically speaking, this may not be a viable thing to try and preserve all this work. Well, thanks for all the hours that went into it.
Yeah. And I mean, just some technical explanation of why it's not sustainable for us to be able to implement that way. And I think most people should be understand, they should understand that. Yeah, it is sad, but it's the way it goes sometimes.
Just to add one more thing. So in the case of structured data, like this file that I shared, this Markdown file that has the YAML front matter, that may actually be doable because there is some structure there and you can parse it, and Crowdin has APIs for uploading that kind of thing to a translation memory. So in that case, you could essentially provide auto-suggest things for Crowdin. So when someone is seeing that string in context in Crowdin and they're translating, there would be a suggestion there from the memory saying, this might be what you're looking for. But in the case of Markdown, where it's a paragraph and one of the sentences in that paragraph is the proper translation, I think that's a lost cause.
Right. That makes sense.
Okay, I'll let it rest. Sorry for
no,
the reels there.
That was great. It was great. That was really good context. I think we're all sort of gaining context around the scope of what we're doing and what's ahead of us with Crowdin and with creating our own module and stuff like that. So this is all great context. We should move along to some of these other discussions though. Yeah, I guess we sort of started to touch on that. Should we just go ahead and start building a module now and then create issues like you're talking about, like you've been talking about, Zeke? I mean, we need to, but there's 2 things that we need to do. We need to set up our Crowdin profile for Node.js, and then at least have something that we can start to work with if it is like a English translation or whatever that we start with, and then start working against that, sort of thing.
Yeah. So in our experience with Crowdin, we were able to just create a test project. You can do like a demo project or something, and then they're actually able to flip a switch on it. So if you're like, okay, this is ready for prime time, they can make it a real project. Also, we can work with Andre, but I think in general we could keep the project private until such time as we're ready to let other folks know about it, even though it's an open source project. So there's a lot of flexibility there. I think it might be useful to try and find a really small project to kick things off. Like even Richard, I know you were saying like we probably don't need the notes from these meetings translated into Chinese, but like something small along those lines could be a good way to just test the waters. Obviously, also the website would be a good starting point. Sounds like there are several pieces, several projects, basically several source content coming from different places. And in the case of Electron, we actually consume the website localized strings and the API docs in Markdown and the tutorials in Markdown all into the same repository, which is then synced with Crowdin. So we only have one project on Electron, which has worked fine for us, but you could also have multiple if that made more sense.
Yeah,
I actually wanted to comment on that. Currently as planned, and I don't even see how we could do this, the API docs will not be changing significantly during the redesign. So it might be a good place to start.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Totally. Tierney, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, for context, the API docs live in Node.js Node, and so they're like not a part of the website. They get pulled into the website and built there, or built for the website, but they're not actually part of the website. So that's kind of like, that might be a good place to start working on that.
Yeah, I think it's becoming pretty clear that yeah, definitely. So I think like Zeke was saying, if we just pick something small, like translating that we can sort of get our feet wet with, translating the like meeting notes or something, and then move on to the API documentation, that sounds like a good plan of action for us. Does everyone agree with that or have other thoughts?
I don't.
You don't.
I know this is what I just said, but I'm just kind of throwing out ideas here. But it may also be beneficial to just flip the switch for Node.js/Node and see how that goes too, especially if it's happening like behind closed doors and no one can see that we flipped on the wrong languages or pulled in the wrong files or whatever.
When you say flip the switch, what do you mean?
To make the Crowdin project visible to the public.
Gotcha.
So Tierney, just so you know, the Electron project essentially copied Node's style of documentation. So we similarly have all the source documentation and API docs are Markdown files that live in the Electron repo, and they go through this circuitous path to the website.
I hate it so much.
Yeah, that's what all the automation is in place for, with semantic release, Greenkeeper, and Heroku all doing different parts to like move it along. But
gotcha.
Yeah, I think the hardest part for us now is like educating folks around where they should be making their contributions. So like we have an i18n repo, and we occasionally get pull requests that are like, hey, I fixed your file. And we're like, no, this is not the place to do it. And we've taken these incremental steps, like, okay, first we have like a pull request template that says like, hey, if you're translating here, this isn't the place to do it. But people don't always read those, and we still get PRs open. So the hardest work, I think, is just figuring out how to educate people and help steer them in the right direction so that they can contribute to the project in the right place.
Gotcha. So my only concern with doing it on Node.js Node is we don't have anyone from the TSC here. who could advise us on the barriers to that. So I will take it on to either try to get someone to come to the next meeting, or get someone from the TSC participating in the i18n group, just because we're going to need to have their permission, their blessing to start doing that in Node Core, because this is a community committee project, not a TSC project. So there's some smaller barriers there, but hopefully nothing should be too big.
Yeah, that'd be awesome to get somebody from the TSC as sort of a liaison for those kind of questions. We're definitely going to have quite a few, since we're trying to land stuff, into Node. So awesome. Thanks, Tierney, for taking that on. Yeah. Do we anything else we want to discuss regarding that? Can we identify like a first thing that we want to do? Just like, it would just be cool to have something named.
I'll give you some advice. This is always the hardest part, Ben. How is it easy to just turn it on for like the i18n repo?
I would suppose so.
I would think the first step, so if this were me, I would probably create a process to pull content out of Node.js/Node and put it into a different repository, and write it with the expectation that eventually this will be a script that'll be running every however long. In the case of Electron, it runs every 10 minutes.
Right, right.
And so basically staging a repository that will be the repository that integrates with Crowdin. So that could be i18n. Probably makes sense for it to be i18n. That's what totally. I would do first.
Yeah, I think that's great. And you're recommending keeping it. Maybe we can keep our initial repo private. You're saying that's what we were saying? Like keep it private to maybe the working group members?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I guess if it becomes prohibitively challenging to keep it private, then it may not be worth the effort, because anyone who notices is probably interested in the topic.
Yeah.
I'd be more concerned about keeping it private on Crowdin than on GitHub, because people jump into Crowdin and just start translating without, like, it's kind of more, there's less process there. Like you can just go in and start translating things. You don't have to like open a pull request or open an issue. So,
yep.
Yeah, I'm not intimately familiar. I mean, I know Node is a huge project, but with Electron, we can often do, we can write blog posts in public. And if somebody happens to be reading the pull requests on the website, like they find out about the blog post a little early, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I know Node has a lot more process around this stuff. So
yeah. I think maybe that might be advantageous in the early stages to keep the Crowdin projects relatively private until it's like until we have some kind of, until we're pushing something up, or have some kind of movement. I think that's really sage. We should probably just make an issue about that specifically, and maybe if anybody has thoughts beyond what we've talked about, we can discuss it there. But I think just being having some tact about when we move from being private to public is healthy.
Oh, I have another thought. So we created. We didn't want. There's like an issue with Crowdin's OAuth integration where you kind of, I forget the details, but you kind of have to give it like carte blanche to do anything it wants in your organization or something. So we didn't want that. So we created a bot user called Glotbot, and it only has access to the i18n repo. Write access or admin access. So it's has very tightly scoped access. and that is the account that we use to integrate with to connect Crowdin to GitHub. So it's not any individual, it's just this one account. So if for whatever reason Crowdin was compromised, the worst thing they could do is trash the i18n repo, which wouldn't be so bad. But that's definitely something that Node should do too. Like, don't just set it up with your account.
No.
Is there a Node user for these kinds of things? Or, I mean, I guess maybe it would be useful to just have one specifically for i18n.
So there's a couple different ones. I don't think we have any issue. Sorry, promoting Steven again. I don't think we have any issue creating new ones for that. We do have the ones that exist are currently scoped to their specific task. I don't think we give them permission to do all the things just for accountability on their account. So there's no issue creating one. From what I understand now, the bot situation has at least gotten better, and we're more willing to do automation around that because we've moved all the private things out of the Node repo, including security and things like that. So,
nice.
Hey, this has been really awesome. In the interest of time, since we are coming here like really soon to the top of the hour, I noticed that Steven joined us, and if he is interested in giving us an update on standard stuff, you could totally do that in like a 2 or 3 minute fashion.
Yeah, my apologies, and I did add some things to the agenda above under reports.
No worries at all. That's awesome. Thanks for adding that.
We'll keep the schedule going here. I tried to get at least catch a bit. So I can go briefly here. ECMA 402 has had a bunch of frequent meetings. They've had stakeholders from V8, Chrome, and all the browsers really sitting around the table, which has been great. And we could probably even get some more participants from Node or from here if there's interest. I'm trying to represent kind of ICU CLDR side and also Node where I can. The ICU 61 and CLDR 33 are finishing them shortly. In fact, I'm overdue on reviews. Expect in alpha PR to start showing up for ICU 61 sometime in the next couple of weeks as I try to get that going there. I don't expect a lot of issues, but we'll see. I did find some issues with running Node on older ICUs, and I have a pull request which someone kindly landed, but there are a few other things like that. In general, one thing I'd like to do is basically need to identify which versions of ICU works on Node. And I think right now it needs to be, it's 59, it's actually 59 plus right now, but it should be at least 58 or even 57. So anyway, there's not currently a matrix or test for which versions, and there really should be. So anyway, that's on my to-do list. There's an old closed issue somewhere for that. The other thing I should mention is that the old Intel repository can be archived once I finish going through the issues. I think there are some relevant ones. This is one I just mentioned. So I was going to either file them in the general Node repo or even in the i18n issues. So please take a look over the old repository. If you see anything that you'd like to adopt, please do so. Close the issue there and reopen it somewhere else. And that's all for me.
That is awesome. I just also really, I know we're at time, but just want to recommend if anybody wants to, if you're excited about getting into, the stuff that Stephen was talking about and standards, definitely reach out to Stephen. And I would love to join a 402 meeting or something sometime soon and just get some context around it out of curiosity and hopefully, building up that side of things within the internationalization repo. I did post the old INTL repo link in the comments here. So if you want to skim the issues there, as Stephen had mentioned, please do so.
Yeah, and do you see under the reports section, that's what I've been updating earlier in the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
So I put a link to that there. The idea is that the repo will be archived, not deleted, but archived once the issues are all closed.
Totally. Awesome. Right on. Well, we're at time, everybody, and I just want to thank y'all for joining us. I think we have a good trajectory and ideas about where we're going, and good context about the things that are already happening. And I'm excited to do this with y'all. So if no one has anything else to say, all right, we can say bye.
Unicode conference call for proposals closes Friday. If anyone wants to go to the Unicode conference,
oh,
put
awesome.
a link in the agenda.
Right on. Thanks, Stephen.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks.
See y'all later.
Hey, thank
Bye.
y'all.
Bye.
Bye.